We're going step by step through our ISO 9001-2015 free PDF checklist. We go clause by clause and talk about what we're looking for in ISO 9001-2015 to help you implement your quality management system. This will be our top tips as we go through step by step our ISO 9001-2015 free PDF checklist. Welcome to Best Practice TV. Stay tuned. So let's get into this. What we've got is this great free checklist on ISO 9001-2015 that you can download. I'm going to go clause by clause through this checklist and talk you through just some top tips and tricks and ideas of how you can address the requirement or what to look for in your organisation to address what we're talking about. So the first part of the checklist talks about context. I'm just going to read the question and we're going to have a quick chat about it. Have you determined the external and internal issues that are relevant to your organisation's purpose and the achievement of customer satisfaction and the organisation's strategic direction? So what we're talking about over on the right hand side of the checklist is what documents or what reference material or what evidence would you present to prove that you're doing with that. I've got three top things that you could look at. The first would be the business plan. Now, I do stumble across lots of organisations that say, oh, we don't need a business plan plans are irrelevant. Well, I think you might want to reconsider that opinion. So definitely put forward your business plan. We can help you with links to different templates on the internet that are free for business plans. You can do a Google search. But a business plan here, because that's talking about your strategic direction. The second thing here we would be probably looking for, or it'd be a good idea to have, is a SWOT analysis, looking at your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And that will help you to address your internal and your external issues. And at a very high level here, we could also drop the SWOT analysis and the business plan out into a risk register. So they'd be three things that we'd be looking for that have been made specific to your organisation to address that first question. The second question, do you have a way of reviewing and monitoring these on a regular basis? Now, if you've got a business plan and you've got a strategic process of strategic planning and execution in place in your organisation, I'd be highly recommending that you run on a quarterly basis and you have a management review meeting or a review of the business plan and the dashboard of statistics for how your company is tracking on a quarterly basis. So if you were to have those quarterly meetings, the strategic reviews and the strategic check-in for your business, then you'd be meeting that requirement. The third question here is saying, have you determined the needs and expectations of interested parties that are relevant to the quality management system? So here you could be looking at a stakeholder analysis, maybe as a brainstorming exercise on a whiteboard or on some butcher's paper, looking at all the different stakeholders in your organisation and what they're interested in, what they're concerned about, what you can do to make them happy, what you can do to make them upset. So doing a stakeholder analysis and then starting to identify any unique requirements that they've got, and again, dropping those into that risk register that we talked about a couple of questions back. Has the scope of the quality management system been determined, taking into account internal and external issues, interested parties and products and services? So it is important to understand what is the scope. Now, a lot of people get they do get caught up and struggle with this particular requirement, but let's just talk about your business plan. You've got a business plan. What part of your business or what parts of your business does your business plan relate to? And so if it relates to the whole business, then the scope here is the whole business. So when we look at all aspects of the business and we look at all stakeholders involved in each stage, in each process, in each part, in each geographical location, we can start to do that analysis and identify all those issues. Where do we write those issues down? Again, back in that risk register that we talked about at the beginning of this process. Has your quality management system been established, including the processes needed and their sequence and interaction? Now, a little process map that says, sales and marketing and finance and operations and human resources, for example, or warehousing or supply or project management. We've done that on a bunch of our different YouTube videos here. You look at the process flow or the process map and having an understanding of how each of the parts of your business relate to each other and fall into a logical sequence. That's important to establish, if that makes sense. And have the criteria for managing these been established together with responsibilities, methods, measurements, and related performance indicators needed to ensure the effective operation and control. Now, if you go back a couple of YouTube videos here on our Best Practice TV YouTube channel, you'll see the process flow, where we looked at each stage. We looked at marketing, sales, finance, operations, and then we did the who, what, when, where, how. and we develop that into a bit of a responsibilities matrix. So it is important for each of the key processes that somebody is responsible. Now it could be one person or many, and that each of the tasks that need to take place to keep your customers happy and deliver your services is outlined and becomes a responsibility. As we move into the next part of the checklist, we're talking about leadership. And the first question is, has top management taken accountability for the effectiveness of the quality management system? Now, where we would typically see that happen is in the business plan, where we've got commitments to the responsibilities and we've got the senior executive of the business committing to implementing the business plan and implementing the systems and processes required by that. So the place to be writing that, if you want to make that statement, would be in your business plan, and then running that through your performance management process, where you performance manage everybody in the business, including the executives and owners if you're a smaller or medium-sized business. Have the policy and objectives for the system which are compatible with the strategic direction of the organisation been established and communicated. Now, we'll jump to it later on in the checklist, but what we look for here is a dashboard of statistics, and then on that dashboard of statistics, we look for some targets, some goals, some objectives. So understanding what it is that you want to achieve as you've outlined in your strategic plan or your business plan, and having those things captured so the business knows where it's going. Here at Best Practice, we've got our dashboard of statistics. It gets reported every Monday. It goes up on the wall in all of our offices, and our team can see how we're tracking from a performance perspective on 30 key statistics. And they also know, because we communicate it to them on those graphs, we mark the graph with what our objective, what our goal is, where we want to take those numbers or that particular statistic. Have the objectives been established at relevant department and individual levels within the business? Well, of course, here at Best Practice, the answer to that question is yes. We've got 30 statistics that go across all the different 6 teams here at Best Practice. What does your business do? Do you have a dashboard of statistics? Have you identified the targets, and have you broken those targets, those numbers, those things that people can manage themselves in their part of the business, the part of the business's performance that they are responsible for? So you need to have the objectives being established at relevant department and individual levels within the business. So what evidence, the checklist is asking for you, what evidence are you going to show to prove that you do that? Have the requirements for the quality management system been integrated into the business processes, and have management promoted awareness of the process approach? Now, back in the first part of this video, we talked about a risk register. A risk register is really important as it identifies the issues or the things that can go wrong, the things that you want to control. So what we're saying there is, have the requirements for the system been integrated into business processes? Now, if something can go wrong, like you can upset a customer, then what are you putting in place to prevent that? And that's what we're implying here. So what can you show, or what can you present to prove that you've closed out or addressed that particular question? Have customer requirements and applicable statutory and regulatory requirements been determined, met, and communicated within the organisation? Now, that's quite a deep question, but what we're looking at in your process flow, in your service provision, in your project management, in your manufacturing, in the systems and processes and services, and with the products that you provide to your customers, what are the codes of practice? What are the guidelines, the industry standards, the international standards, the American standards, Australian standards, English standards, European standards, all the different standards that are out there? What are the specific standards applicable to the services or products that your organisation prepares and presents and sells ultimately? And how does that apply? So we're starting to look at that process flow and what are the applications. Now, you could put that into your risk register. So a non-conformance with the standards or non-compliance with the standards will cause a problem out in the marketplace for your customers or for some of your stakeholders. So it's important to identify that. If it becomes an issue, it could be also included on your risk register. Have the risks and opportunities that are relevant to the quality management system been established? Now, again, back in the first part of this checklist, I gave you a really simple approach, which was a SWOT analysis and a risk register. That'd be the place that you'd start to identify the risks and opportunities relevant to your system, or the SWOT analysis, where we did strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Now, what you're starting to see is that some of those simple things I'm recommending address a whole bunch of the elements of the ISO 9001-2015 standard. Has the organisation established and communicated the responsibilities and authorities for the effective operation of the system? And again, we talked about who, what, when, where, and how. Now, it might be that you've got one quality manager or you've got one systems manager, or you divest the responsibilities across the whole organisation. You decentralise the responsibilities. Now, it is important to be nominating in a job description or a responsibility statement specific responsibilities around all aspects of the management system, but equally all of the processes that need to be implemented to keep your customers happy. Now, in the next part of our ISO 9001-2015 checklist, we're moving into planning. Now, this is, in the true sense of the term, business planning, and it's obviously captured in that business plan that we talked to. We talked to that point earlier in this presentation. Now, have the risks and opportunities that need to be addressed to give assurance that the quality system can achieve its intended results been established. We talked about that risk register. We talked about the SWOT analysis. That's the evidence, that completed risk register, or that constantly improving risk register and SWOT analysis. That's going to be the reference and the evidence that you're going to present to prove that you've addressed that requirement. Has the organisation planned actions to address these risks and opportunities and integrated them into system processes? Now, this is the first time where we start to talk in more detail about controls. We identify the risks, we assess the priorities, we talk about controls, the things that we're going to do to prevent those issues coming to fruition. So in that risk register, we can start to nominate the controls, and then obviously we can be going through the organisation, ensuring that we're doing those things on a regular basis to prevent those risks or threats coming to fruition, or ensuring that we execute on the opportunities that we've got. And the last part here to planning is there a defined process for the determining the need for changes to the quality management system and managing their implementation? Now, that's starting to unpack what your change management process is going to be. Now, I won't lie to you, here at Best Practice we do struggle. We're growing very, very quickly. We struggle with our change management process. We make changes because we're very dynamic, we're very flexible, we're moving very quickly. And what we've got to ensure is that we follow through and we give staff training, that we communicate, that we update our policies and processes, and that we give our staff time to practice and learn the new processes and absorb and digest that information. So is there a process for determining the need for changes to the quality management system and managing their implementation? So start thinking here about, well, what's your rollout process or your go live process or your change management process going to look like, and what are the things that you need to tick off and ensure that when you do make changes in the business that everybody knows about it and then it gets bedded down and that it has a beneficial impact on your performance. Now, moving into the next part of the checklist, we're talking about support, and we've got a couple of questions here. Has the organisation determined and provided the resources needed for the establishment, implementation, maintenance and continual improvement of the system, including people, environmental and infrastructure requirements? Now, this is like all the ingredients. Have you got all the ingredients to make your amazing chocolate cake? We've got the kitchen, we've got the oven, we've got the bowls, the cups, the plates, we've got the ingredients, we've got the wet ingredients and the dry ingredients. It's assembling all of those things, and a cook or a chef is really important, and that person knows what they're doing. So we need to start to think here about, have we determined all of those requirements? Do we know what we need? And it could be simple methodologies, it could be simple lists of raw materials, ingredients or instructions, and it could be a combination of all of the job descriptions. So it's a generic statement here, but it's getting you to think about, have we got everything, have we assembled everything we need to assemble to do the value adding that we do in our process? If monitoring and measuring is used for evidence of conformity of products and services to specified requirements, has the organisation determined the resources needed to ensure valid, reliable monitoring and measurement results? Now, if you're using a set of scales in your kitchen to cook your amazing chocolate cake and the weight of the ingredients is really critical, how do you know that your scales are correct so that you get all the ratios right? If you're in a factory, if you're manufacturing or doing a service or you've got software, how do you know the readouts, the information you're being given is correct? Much the same as driving a motor vehicle. The motor vehicle's got the speedo in front of you. How do you know that speedo is correct? You might have changed the tyre size or the wheel size or the gears in the gearbox, and all those sorts of things can affect whether your speedo is accurate in your vehicle. And in the old days, we used to talk about calibration. Now, don't get hung up on it. It's not, it's a critical issue, but it's not something to be, an overweighted priority in the management system. But it is important just to know that if you're relying on data, if you're relying on testing and checking and measurement equipment, that it's reading out accurately. And let's just keep that really simple. So The next question is, has the organisation determined the knowledge necessary for the operation of its processes and achievement of conformity of products and services and implemented a lessons learnt process? Now, we haven't talked about improvement yet because that's at the latter part of the standard, but how do we know, or how can we tell that we've learnt from the mistakes we make in the past? So we can start to look to developing something like an improvements register or an issues list where we can start to actually capture and understand and analyse where things went wrong and the preventative strategies we put in place to ensure they don't happen again. It's not about fixing the problem. If something's broken, of course, take steps to fix that problem, but how are we going to prevent that happening again in the future? How will we document? Who will we train? What will we ensure that we do in the future to prevent that happening again? Has the organisation ensured that those persons who can affect the performance of the system are competent on the basis of appropriate education, training, experience, and taken action to ensure that those persons can acquire the necessary competence? Now, here in this part of the checklist, we're talking about training. We're talking about a learning needs analysis where we start to capture the competency requirements or the learning and knowledge requirements that we need to have to start our operations, and then equally the ongoing top-up, update, refresher training that needs to take place. And having that identified, then on top of all of that, a register to keep a record of who's got what training to ensure that we constantly maintain people, keep them up to date, and if there is training that expires, that gets updated and maintained. The last thing you want is your pilot of your amazing aircraft that's taking you on holidays to have not kept his training up to date and he's not able to fly the plane. So if you think about pilots flying aircraft and all the training that they need and the knowledge and skills and competencies they need, how does that apply, that analogy apply in your organisation? Okay, and the last question here is, has the documented information required by the standard and necessary for the effective implementation and operation of the quality system been established? Now, this is the part of the checklist where there's been a big change from the ISO 9001-2008 edition to the standard to the 2015 edition of the standard. You don't need to write all of the mandatory documents that we used to in the past. We used to have 6 mandatory procedures and manuals and documented objectives and targets. What we're saying now is when you read the standard and it says document a process, like a policy, a quality policy, for example, risks and threats and opportunities, this is the part of the standard where it's just saying, just check off and ensure that you've been through the standard and you've written down everything you need to write down, or you've captured. Now, I'm not saying write it down. It could be recorded in a video, much to this style that you're watching right now, or it could be an audio file, it could be a poster, it could be an intranet site. It doesn't necessarily need to be, in fact I would recommend against it being black and white toner on paper, because we have found through thousands of assessments that people just don't read policies and procedures because they're boring, they don't get what they want quickly, and so things like videos and websites are a much more effective way to go forward. So as we're moving into the final parts of our checklist now, and specifically we're looking now at operations. This is all the doing part of your business. This is where you get into doing the thing that you do. And if you've seen Simon Sinek, he talks about, why, what and how. This is all of the how, which is the cooking of cakes and the running of trucks and the serving of customers and all of those critical little processes that you do that are part of your amazing business and the amazing services you provide your customers. So with that in mind, let's get into these questions. Is there a defined process for the provision of products and services that meet requirements defined by the customer? Now, you might provide a product or a service and it's just the same every time and the customer doesn't get a lot of say in the product or the service. But what they do get a say in is the price that they pay and the time that that product or service gets delivered. When does the product or service get delivered? And so it is important to ensure that you actually are capturing an order from the customer, and that order is starting to say, we're going to do it for this price on this time or this specification. Now, if there are subtle little differences between what each customer requires, it is important to be capturing that. Now, your customer might send you a purchase order, and that would be the evidence you would present here, or you might actually present a quote or a fee proposal. So that's the evidence that you'd be presenting for this particular question. When changes are planned, are they carried out in a controlled way and actions taken to mitigate any adverse effects? So this is changes in your process to ensure that if you've made a commitment to a customer and you're making a change to your process, are you still continuing to deliver the service as promised to the customer? What evidence would you present here? What process would you present to prove that you've dealt with that step? Are any outsourced processes managed and controlled? Now here at Best Practice, yes, we use contract assessors. We have a few contract assessors that do work for us. My brother's business, family businesses, lots of our customers' businesses use contractors. Many of the construction companies that we work with all use contractors. And it's important to have it, and your outsourced processes, your contractor processes, the bricklayer, the concreter, the steel fixer, the carpenter, the plumber, the electrician on the building site, that those processes are controlled because they're not your strength, they're not your core business, that they're controlled to ensure that your end game, your end result is a happy, satisfied, compliant customer. Is there a defined process for reviewing and communicating with customers in relation to information relating to products and services, inquiries, contracts, and order handling? Now this is all your information. This is your brochure, this is your website, this is your Facebook page, your YouTube channel, your Instagram. It's your online store. It's the specifications tab for the products you sell in your online store. It's the fee proposal, the the building specification. This is the stuff. It's about that defining, reviewing, and communicating with customers that important information. All of your brochures, fact sheets, all that sort of stuff. So that's the type of stuff here that you would present for this element of the checklist. Is this review conducted prior to the organisation's commitment to supply products and services? Do you have a pre-supply commitment? Now, this is typically relevant for businesses that customise their services. For example, a construction contract. Do you do a contract review before you make the final commitment to provide the service? Do we have the staff? Do we have the resources? Do we have the cash to cash flow this project? It's that process. So a pre-commencement or a contract review process before you do the final sign-off, so that you're absolutely confident deep down in your heart that yes, you can provide that service. If you design and develop products and services, are these processes established and implemented in line with requirements of the standard? Now the standard has got some elements to go through to do design, where it talks about if you're customizing. Now if you're an architect or an engineer or a specific designer, interior designer, have you got a process to go through to check as you go through each of those phases that your design doesn't drift off track and not provide for the customer's requirements or the customer's brief? Do you ensure that externally provided processes, products and services conform to specified requirements? Do you send your suppliers a purchase order? Do you have a specification for those products on that purchase order, or a part number? It doesn't need to be a specification, it could just simply be a part number, so it could be that simple. Don't overcomplicate this process, just think about the simple way to address the requirement. Do you have criteria for evaluation, selection and monitoring of performance and re-evaluation of external providers? Now, it's not about having a big database of approved suppliers. It's about ensuring that for the particular service, for that particular customer order, are you happy with that particular supplier? And it's just about mapping that and ensuring that you keep it relevant. It's not worth the energy, the effort, or the cost to go and approve and audit all of your suppliers if you're not going to use them. It's more important to ensure that the supplier that you've engaged, the external supplier that you've engaged to help with this particular customer or product or service, then it's about validating and ensuring that they can commit to the promises that they're making to you. Now, importantly, if that supply is working for you a lot, then you can minimize the amount of effort that you put in and you can have longer periods of time between those evaluations. So it's about finding the economy of scale there. But definitely don't bank up a whole bunch of pre-approved suppliers when you've never got the intention to use them, or there's no immediate order to use them. Find that happy balance. And then, is the provision of products and services carried out in controlled conditions? Now it's important, if I give you an analogy here, a chocolate ice cream factory. And in that chocolate ice cream factory, it's important to be cold. So as you make the ice cream, it doesn't melt. It's important to be clean and hygienic so that it's safe to consume for your beautiful customers who are going to have their lovely chocolate ice cream, or more importantly, all the little kids, they're finishing school and they're going to the ice cream shop on a Friday afternoon to get an ice cream. You don't want to be making all those beautiful children sick. So you've got controlled conditions for the manufacturing of your food. You've got controlled conditions for the concrete bridge that you're building so that the concrete goes off under controlled conditions and the bridge is strong and solid and built in accordance with the specifications. So have a think about what the controlled conditions are for the products and services that you're providing. It might need to be safe, it might need to be secure, it might need to be in a top secret environment. have a think about all the control of conditions around your product and service. 4 more questions to go. Do you have effective methods of ensuring traceability during the operational process? Now, batch numbers, tracing numbers, for manufacturing particularly, if you've got issues, if you're manufacturing food or if you're manufacturing parts, how do we know if we need to do a recall? Particularly with motor vehicles, we've got batch numbers and we've got part numbers and traceability so that if there is an issue, it can be recalled and rectified. And that's important for you guys out there doing manufacturing and those sorts of things. Or even construction projects where, you know, when we're placing concrete in a construction project, all the different places that we put the different truckloads of wet concrete, so we can trace it to the place where it was placed if it had a problem and the plant reports there's a problem with the concrete, we know whereabouts the poor quality concrete is in the job. Where property belonging to customers or external providers is used in provision of the product or service, is it controlled effectively? Now, while we're shooting this video, I've dropped my car at the mechanic to have some work done. Now, I don't want my car to get scratched. I don't want it to be damaged in any way. Is it being looked after? So this is the process here where if customers are giving you their personal belongings or something that you're going to work on for them, are you protecting it? Are you ensuring you don't create any damage? Because that's going to upset the customer in the future, and you want to ensure that you've looked after all this stuff. Particularly if you're a tradesman and you're going into someone's house or home to do work, how are you protecting it? How are you looking after it? And you're leaving it better than when you found it, or better than the way you found it. Is there a requirement for post-delivery activities associated with products and services such as warranty, maintenance services, recycling, final disposal, and are these defined and managed? So start thinking about the life cycle analysis. So we're starting to look at what do we need to do. Now, importantly here in Australia, packaging of IT, like all the cameras we're using, all of the packaging that goes with all of this IT equipment that we use here and all of the technology that we use here at Best Practice, it's got to be recyclable. There's a thing here in Australia called the National Packaging Covenant. So there is a requirement for post-delivery activities. Any packaging that goes to a consumer needs to be able to be recycled. Cardboard, plastic, foam, all of those sorts of things. So start thinking about that. Do you provide a warranty? What do you need to provide? Do you provide maintenance? What do you need to provide? And the last question here under operations is, are any non-conforming processes, outputs managed so as to prevent unintended use? And this is the concept of quarantine. If you identify in your process that something's gone wrong, how do we quarantine it? How do we ensure that it doesn't get out into the market, that it doesn't become something that's unsafe for the customer to use? How do we quarantine that? Check it, fix it, maintain it, do what we need to do to ensure that it's safe, meets the customer's requirements before we hand it over. So if it's got a problem, you don't just give it to the customer. That's going to be one of the first things that's going to upset them. So we need to ensure that it's working, that it's rectified, and that's what a quality management system's all about. Now we're getting to the final parts of our PDF checklist here on ISO 9001-2015, and right now we're into my favorite part, which is performance evaluation. I love to ask, do you have a clear picture of your organization's performance? Do you understand the metrics? Do you understand the drivers? Do you understand the numbers so that you can plan and manage and control, improve and ultimately grow your organization? I'm very passionate about organizations and you guys out there running and working in and improving organizations. I'm very passionate about keeping it simple, keeping it fun, and keeping it growing and keeping it sustainable into the future. And this is the part of the standard that I get really passionate about, because it starts to talk about, has the organization determined what needs to be monitored and measured? What methods of monitoring and measurement, analysis and evaluation need to be put in place to ensure we've got good quality results? Here at Best Practice, we've got a dashboard we've been using for about 5 years now of 30 statistics that track our performance. We can look at it. We can say, oh, we didn't go very well last month or last week. And we can look at what we can refocus in terms of resources to improve that performance. Has it established when the results from monitoring and measurement shall be analysed and evaluated? Here at Best Practice, we do that every Monday in our executive meeting. So it's every Monday. We've established that every Monday we'll look at those results. We then meet monthly and we look at our monthly results, and then our executive team meets quarterly. So that's how we've established that, and we've documented that in our business plan. At the back of our business plan with monitoring and measurement, we've established that that's when we will look at our numbers and do our reporting. Have methods of monitoring customer perceptions of the provision of products and services been established? Here at Best Practice, we've got a customer survey that we send out after we've been to see a customer. What do you do to survey your customers to check that A, they're happy, B, what you could do to improve, whether they would refer you to one of their friends or family. Now that Net Promoter Score, if you're running something like Net Promoter Score, that's the place, this is the place that you look at that, because that's ultimately what you want to do. Happy customers that are absolutely stoked with your service, they're going to be the ones that are going to recommend your product or service to their friends, to their family, to their network, to their colleagues, and there's nothing better than a customer referral. So has it determined the need or opportunities for improvements with the quality system, and how these will feed into management reviews? Now this is the first time we've started to talk about management review. Management review, that's that quarterly meeting that our executive get together here at Best Practice. So are you meeting with your executive quarterly to reset, readjust, check in on your business plan? Now your quality management system, that's the system you use to implement your business plan. When are you doing that executive catch-up, that executive summary, looking at the numbers and making those changes? So that's where we feed opportunities for improvement into our management reviews, prioritize, make decisions and say, right, this is the plan for the next quarter. Has the organisation established a process for an internal audit of the system? Internal audits are a great way to identify, are we doing what we said we would do? But what did we say we would do? Well, we did, remember back at the beginning of this video, we talked about doing a risk register, doing a SWOT analysis, identifying policies and processes and controls to run our organisation so we don't upset our customers, that they have a great experience and our customers feel things like love, joy and surprise. So when we're talking here about an internal audit process, we can look at critical parts of the business that are most likely to upset our customers, and we can audit those areas to look for opportunities for improvement, to look for better ways to capture the guidelines, to capture the instructions so our team know what to do that's right, and it's right every time. And has an approach to performance management and performance management reviews been established and implemented? And yes, of course, here at Best Practice we have our dashboard, and then all of our staff meet with their manager on a 6-monthly basis. So we look at the performance of the organisation weekly, monthly and quarterly, and we look at the performance of our people. Obviously, managers looking at their team week to week, but formal performance reviews with our staff, obviously on a 6-monthly basis. Now moving through to the end of the checklist, this is the final part. We've got 4 more questions to go. We're talking about improvement. Has the organisation determined and selected opportunities for improvement and implemented the necessary actions to meet customer requirements and enhance customer satisfaction? Now the intention here of your quality management system, and the question you can ask yourself is, are our clients, are our customers feeling love, joy and surprise? And if they are, you're enhancing and improving customer satisfaction. So if you ask this question at the beginning of the section and start to document your opportunities for improvement, so we're looking for an improvement register here as your evidence, but if you can ask these questions, what is going to improve the customer's experience? What is going to improve the level of customer satisfaction? What can we do to just blow our customer away so they will be really excited? And it might just be deliver the service on time, on budget, as per the specification. You don't necessarily need to go beyond the call of duty. Consistency and commitment are great ways to just establish and enhance customer satisfaction. Has the organisation appropriate processes for managing non-conformities and the related corrective actions? When things go wrong, do you have a process to identify they've gone wrong, fix them, document it, and then start to look in and investigate improvement opportunities? Has the organisation decided how it will address the requirement to continually improve the suitability, adequacy and effectiveness of the system? Now the quality management system, the system you use to implement your business plan, what have you identified to do to improve the system, to simplify the system, to simplify your business? What are those opportunities to make it more efficient, to make it more fun, to make it simpler and let it grow? And then the last question here is, are any non-conforming processes outputs managed so as to prevent their unintended use? And this is the quarantine section right at the very end, but it's about identifying things that are wrong, putting them on your improvements register, but most importantly, not just sending out the stuff that's broken to customers. Now it is fun in a cookie factory to get a bag of broken biscuits, obviously, because they're still going to taste the same. But what are we doing to improve that process to ensure that there's less broken cookies in the next batch? Because we do have a lot of fun eating the broken cookies at the chocolate chip cookie factory or the Oreo factory, but it is important to be looking at those non-conformances and working out if they need to be quarantined. Now, if the cookies aren't cooked, that's a different story. But if they're just broken, that may be okay. So start thinking about what's the maybe okay in your process, in your business, with your products and services, and start thinking about what you can do to prevent that happening in the future, because you're going to save wastage. Wastage equals cost. Cost equals the opposite to profit. So we want to be looking at what we can do to simplify your business and improve it. So as you get a copy of this free ISO 9001 checklist from the Best Practice web store, you can start to look at and nominate the things that you're going to use or show or present to demonstrate that you've complied with ISO 9001 2015. So I hope you've enjoyed it. There's lots more practical examples to the different parts of ISO 9001 on our YouTube channel. It's really important to hit the subscribe button. There's a checklist on ISO 14001 environmental management. There's a checklist on ISO 45001, the new draft OH&S standard. There's a checklist on the data security standard. So have a look around. There's also a bunch of great courses. If you want more of this great content on ISO 9001, check out the ISO 9001 Essentials course, where we take you deeper into clause by clause of the standard and explain the intent of the clause, what's involved, how you can address it, and build a simple, efficient quality management system for your business. So hit the subscribe button. If you've got any questions, if you want a practical example, comment below this video. We'll shoot another video for you. We'll tag you in the post, and we'll see you next time right here on Best Practice TV. Bye for now.